Hello class, this is group 4 with presentation number 1, and our group consists of myself, which is Byron Bradford.
And I'm Christina Barnett.
And I'm Bailey Patton.
Our research topic was self-defense, and specifically our question was, in Texas, if Mike attempts to steal a car from John's detached garage and John comes out of the house and shoots Mike dead, does John have a viable claim of justifiable homicide? So with that question, I began my search on Westlaw, of course in the jurisdiction of Texas. And I began my search by typing in justifiable homicide, and I wanted that in the same paragraph as protection of personal property. When I typed that search in, I went down. Well, first what I did was I selected the cases over here. And I know just because a case is old doesn't mean it's no good, but I wanted a fairly up-to-date case, so I chose McFadden versus State. And as you can see, I chose that case because it had many of the keywords that I put in, and they were in the same within the same paragraphs with one another. So I went down to head note 16, I believe it is. Or 18 rather. And that took me to the clear intent behind section 9.42, defense of property, is to prevent persons to use deadly force to prevent the actor from committing arson in specific prescribed instances. Now, our research topic deals with a vehicle, but 9.42 is defense of property, and so I'm going to click on that and see where that takes me. And sure enough, there is deadly force to protect property. So in deadly force to protect property, that allows a person to use deadly force to protect property in specific circumstances. And relevant to our research question, you have section 2, when and to the degree he reasonably believes the deadly force is immediately necessary to prevent a number of crimes. And specific to our fact pattern is theft during the nighttime. But there are some other crimes under which you can use deadly force to protect property, but specific to us, again, is theft during the nighttime. And the reason I'm focusing on in the nighttime is because under the crimes or for which you can use deadly force, we have arson, burglary, robbery, aggravated robbery, theft during the nighttime, or criminal mischief during the nighttime. Now remember, under our fact pattern, Mike is stealing a car from John's detached garage. And under these crimes here, the closest match to that scenario would be a theft. But theft has the qualifier during the nighttime. And so what I needed to do was do a little bit more research regarding the nighttime. So under notes and decisions of section 9.42, I was looking for a case that dealt with the nighttime, and sure enough, there are 7 cases dealing with nighttime. So when I click on that, the first case I come to is Laws versus State. It's an 1889 case, but I click on that case and I can see that there is no negative treatment, no yellow flags, no red flags, so that lets me know that is still good case law. And so when I go back, I can see that the Texas court definition of nighttime is any time between 30 minutes after sunset and 30 minutes before sunrise. And there we have that again right here. And so that's why I focused on nighttime. Now, going back to our section 9.42, it refers us to another section, 9.41. So those two work in conjunction with one another when you're talking about the application of deadly force to protect tangible, movable property. property that is. And so Bailey Patton will elaborate a little bit more for us on section 9.41.
Okay, as Byron was explaining about 9.42, so 9.42 and 9.41 are interchangeable because in order for 9.42 to even be presented, the elements in 9.41 have to be met. So the main point we're looking at in 9.41 is a person is in lawful possession of land or tangible movable property is justified in using force against another when and to the degree the actor reasonably believes the force is immediately necessary to prevent or terminate the other's trespass on the land or unlawful interference with the property. So basically what we're saying is John would be justified because he's the person in lawful possession of the property because the property is still currently on his land while the action is taking place. Bullet point B would not be applicable in this situation because Mike hadn't taken the vehicle already. Another point we wanted to make was McFadden versus State, which is actually found in 9.42. So I'm going to go back to 9.42 and scroll down to notes of decision, which brings up the same case that Byron originally started with, which he found this statute 9.42 deadly force to protect property in, and I'm going to let Christina elaborate more on main points of that case.
Okay, so like Bailey said, we just went back to kind of like the start of our research process to get a little bit more information, and we went to McFadden versus State, like she said, and here it says intent behind statutory defense of property is to permit persons to use deadly force to prevent the actor from committing arson in specific prescribed circumstances. In other words, a person does not have to wait for the actor to complete the offense before using deadly force. And this is all on our presentation right here under McFadden versus State. What I just read is right here, but a little more information is on this slide right here. And so by McFadden versus State saying that a person does not have to wait for the actor to complete the offense before using deadly force, this would support John's claim, that his viable claim of justifiable homicide, because while Mike had not completed his attempt to steal the car from John's detached garage, under McFadden versus State, John would have a viable claim of justifiable homicide because he didn't necessarily have to wait for Mike to complete stealing his car before he could act. McFadden versus State supports that. And so in conclusion, does John have a viable claim of justifiable homicide? The answer is it depends. And why is because the fact pattern does not tell us whether the incident happens at nighttime or not. So I'll go back up here. Nothing in this fact pattern says anything about the time of day. And Byron is really elaborating on that, especially in Section A of Statute 9.42, to prevent the other's imminent commission of all of these things. Theft during the nighttime, it doesn't say theft just in general. It specifically says during the nighttime. So that does have an effect on whether John would have this viable claim of justifiable homicide. Second, John is the one in lawful possession of his property under Statute 9.41, which is right here. So he is in lawful possession of land or tangible movable property. He's justified in using force against another when and to the degree the actor reasonably believes the force is immediately necessary to prevent or terminate the other's trespass on the land or unlawful interference with the property. So this could be taken either way. Somebody could try to say that he wasn't justified in using force, but we think that a court would tend to think that this supports John's claim of justifiable homicide. And then lastly, it depends on the evidence presented about whether the property could have been protected by any other means other than use of deadly force. And so this one, the answer for that can be found under McFadden versus State, which was under Statute 9.42, which Bailey was talking about earlier. In it, it says that the murder defendant was entitled to instruction on the use of deadly force in defense of property. There was some evidence from which a jury could have found that defendant reasonably believed that use of deadly force was immediately necessary to prevent the victim from committing arson. And there was some evidence that the defendant reasonably believes that the property could not have been protected by any other means. Of course, this is subjective because a jury could find that it was reasonable that the property couldn't have been protected by any other means, but then again, they could find that it was unnecessary for John to shoot Mike dead. So that's why it really depends on the jury that's on the case. So maybe they could have found that he could have used a verbal command and it would have done the job and he didn't have to use deadly force, or they could have come to the conclusion that John was in the right and he should have used deadly force to prevent Mike from stealing his property. But in conclusion, the answer is just that it depends. We probably needed some more facts in our fact pattern to really give us some more detail and some more direction. But according to the fact pattern, this is what we came up with. And thank y'all for tuning in.